So, welcome everybody to the evening or afternoon as it is with Douglas. Thank you all for coming on. And I know that I shared some stuff with you today that of this man in front of me here, Douglas Vermeeren, who literally did the follow-up to The Secret. So how thoughts become things. And that's when I first got to know you, Douglas. So film producer, director, much more than that. You know, there's so much more. Best-selling author. I couldn't even list the things that, Douglas, that you've actually done and helped other people. But one of the things that that I was talking today about was actually the predictable millionaire. So I'm going to just pass over to you, first of all, to introduce yourself better than I've done, because you know you better than me. So off you go.
Well, again, I appreciate all the kind things that you said, but the reality is I'm just having fun. That's it, right? I think this is what we've got to do in life. And when you kind of, what is it that my friend John DeMartini says, that when your vocation becomes your vacation, suddenly you found something that you're a success, right? So I think that that's the key. Yeah, I guess just to share what I'm up to lately, for those of you who kind of know my story, when I was 19, I went out and I started interviewing the world's top achievers, and I got to some of the biggest names in business, and that was the way that I learned about business. But long story short, whenever I want to understand a subject or something, I really go deep into it. And so I became a millionaire at the age of 19. And I have to confess, I've always looked back and wondered two things. One, was it luck, right? And number two, was it maybe the people that I was surrounding myself with? You hear that you become like the 5 people you surround yourself with. But was it that maybe that 4 of them had sympathy for me, and that's what made my first million, is they really literally helped me find the opportunities and they opened the doors. And so how much of it was really to blame? And kind of looking at that, you know, I mean, I've learned a lot over the years about creating wealth, but I really didn't see any materials from anyone in the marketplace today that was able to systematically show patterns and show how it could be done. In fact, there was even a book written in 1996 that most people are familiar with called The Millionaire Next Door, where Thomas Stanley, when he looked at the statistics behind millionaires. But if we're being honest, I mean, 1996, that's pre-internet. I mean, the world has changed. And so a lot of the data that he has is completely different or incorrect right now. For example, in his book, he states that the average age for a person to become a millionaire is generally around 58 years old. And a female.
Yeah,
I mean, but it's crazy, because if you think about it, there's 2 problems with the information that he shares there. Is number one, the current age now has dropped to literally your early 40s. And the thing that's brought that number down so much is that we've got the internet, and the youngest millionaire that I interviewed was 9 years old. So this idea of you having to be older is like just totally not true. The other thing that was interesting is in 1996, the divorce rate was lower than it is today. And generally the females in the marketplace, it was also lower, and females were typically getting paid less. And so when he combined those numbers about millionaires, he oftentimes did it with people who were doing it as a couple. And that's also not the case right now, is that there's a lot of females that are out there making millions and they've got no man in their life. They're not attached to any other income stream. They're doing it themselves. And so some of the data that we found is absolutely startling as far as how easy and accessible it is, again, if you follow the right patterns, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I interviewed 700 millionaires, 700.
I know one of the things that you said as well, the other night I was watching you had a presentation on Predictable Millionaire, and you said that it's an average 24 months for somebody to become a millionaire. So, I mean, that fascinated me, because 24 months isn't actually a long time, but people, I know that Tony Robbins says that we overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in 5 years.
Yeah, well, it's definitely true. And the other thing that's interesting about that other book is they estimated the average time was 12 years. So again, that's also, we've knocked off a decade since then. But here's the thing is we've got to be careful when we say that, because again, let's call that an average, right? Because there's people who are going to definitely do that shorter. The world's record, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, for the fastest 0 to millionaire is 6 minutes and 30 seconds, 33 seconds actually. And so that's the fastest from 0 to millionaire. Now, again, you've got to have some things in place before you pull the trigger to do that. But there's also a lot of students that I know and have seen that, you know, two years is about right. And some have even taken it 3, some have taken it 5, right? Some have taken it longer. But the biggest thing that it is you've got to have the correct strategy, and you've got to have that willingness, which includes your approach, your attitude, your commitment. You've got to change some of the behaviors in your spending. It's kind of funny because I do martial arts, right? And I had somebody ask me one time, how long does it take the average person to become a black belt? And my answer is that always average people don't become black belts. And I'm going to share that that's the same answer for millionaires too. How long does it take the average person to become a millionaire? No. Millionaires are not average people. And so until you're prepared to make these significant commitments and have some changes, not only in the mindset, but also in the actual activities that you're doing, like affirmations aren't enough. You need affirmations too. And I think that this is something that's interesting is there's so many books written around millionaire mindset, but they're written by broke people. And so the millionaire mindset isn't just saying, oh, I'm worth it and I'm worthy and I can create wealth. There's actually some very predictable markers in the mindset about how they evaluate, how they make decisions, how they look at things in a certain way, and even the goals that they set. It's funny, I posted this morning something about goal setting for millionaires, and I thought that this was actually really kind of interesting. Most people talk about, like, if I were to ask, what are your most important goals right now? Well, a lot of people would say, I've got a 5-year plan. I want to, maybe go traveling, or I want to buy a new house, or I want to save money for college or whatever. But the reality is that's not what millionaires think when they're making goals, right? They don't even talk about job promotions or launching my companies. They don't think about that. There's really 4 kind of areas. It's income creation, asset creation, wealth preservation, and then legacy and contribution. And again, as I was interviewing the 400 or 700 of these millionaires, nobody's really talking about what they actually are doing. Everybody's giving their theories, which is why everybody's broke.
Funny enough, I just had a call with somebody and he was talking about, well, I'm learning this stuff, Shane. And I go, but what are you demonstrating? What are you demonstrating with your thoughts and your actions and everything as you're going through? That was one of the key things. Now, this morning as well, we were talking about the 3 laws that you came up with. That literally, So I don't know if you want to share those.
Yeah, I'm happy to share those. I think they're really important laws. So law number 1 that I discovered is and this is going to sound really simple, but again, remember, simple is always the best approach. Law number 1 is if others have done it, you can too. So it really has a lot to do with awareness, right? And I think that a lot of times why people don't even get started on the path to financial freedom or wealth is because they see that others have done it, but they don't understand that they could be included in that, right? The fact that you've seen others do it in the world is actually evidence that this is available to you too. And the reality is I know it's so easy to come from a scarcity mindset and build an excuse and say, yes, others have done it, but, right? But what do we say? The size of your results is always a reflection of the size of your butt, right? So if you've got a big butt, then you're gonna have no results, okay? So, and I know, it sounds funny, okay, your butt, I get it, the play on words, I get it. But that's it, look at the size of your butt. If your butt's big, you're never gonna get anything. So
Reverend, we're just on that, Douglas. Reverend Ike, actually, he says, get your butt out of the way.
Isn't that the truth? Get your butt out of the way. So here's the deal, is if others have done it, you really can do it too. And don't now add a but to that, but they're lucky, but they know something, but they have money to start with, but no. In fact, after interviewing 700 of them, I've seen millionaires in every shape, size, background, context, country, everything. So the reality is you don't have excuses. And write this down, excuses never created anything, okay? I can't think of anything that excuses ever created, right? Well, not in a positive sense anyways. So that's law number 1. If others have done it, you can do it too. So we need to become aware that others have done it. Law number 2, this is the important one. If you follow what others have done, you can do it too. So it's not just a matter of saying others have done it. Now you need to get doing something. You need to follow it, right? There's a pattern. There's a path. What's interesting is you can imagine after interviewing 700 millionaires, we recognize, let's maybe use a few other words, a blueprint, a system, a recipe. If you're making a dress, we call that a pattern, right? Like these are things that people can duplicate and they can do. And we'll talk maybe later about some of those patterns. But law number 3 is really important too, because it's not just enough to get a pattern, right? Like there's a lot of times in life where people will give you a correct strategy, if you will. But what do we say? If self-help becomes shelf-help, like you just put it away and don't do anything with it, then it creates nothing. So how are you really going to now apply that? And law number 3 is if you stay focused and committed to the path that others have used, notice this, you will do it too. That's an equation, right? So again, focused and committed to that path, you will do it too. You can't help but do it. Now, let's talk about focus and committed for a minute, because focus has a lot to do with your vision, what you choose to see, right? Where you choose to put your energy, right? And committed actually has a lot to do with sacrifice, right? What are the boundaries that you're going to build around the things that you really need to keep firm in your life, right? The foundations that you really need to hold on to. And I think this is a big problem with a lot of people is, yes, there's a lot of really great material out there on building wealth and stuff, and some of it is pretty good, but they just kind of, how do we say, they dabble in it. They're not fully committed to it. And so when it comes to, let's say, for example, everybody knows that we need to be paying ourselves first. You've heard that in the book, The Richest Man in Babylon. No, first of all, number one, nobody really, like, who's broke understands what it means to pay yourself first, even if they are. We'll talk about that later. But even knowing the principle, all of a sudden they get to the mall and they see a nice pair of shoes that they're like, oh, wow, I got to have those shoes. And so that principle gets swept out of the way, because we know that people buy into things emotionally and then they back it up logically. But the reality is we also create logic to back up what we emotionally want. So even though we're saying we have logical reasons for doing this, we're not always necessarily following true logic. We're following the logic we've created. So when it comes to that getting committed, most people actually will always sacrifice what they really want in the long term, or even what they're aware of that needs to be created for wealth in the short term, because they want to fulfill some form of immediate gratification. And part of the problem is, to be quite frank, if we're really connecting the dots here, it's because they really don't believe that some of those principles really work, right? Like, why should I sort of, like, say, buy property or invest in myself or invest, because I don't know for sure if it'll work. I mean, I've seen what rich people do, but I really don't know what they do. This is what I've read. So the minute that we really understand the true path of what millionaires do, everything changes. And I might mention again, the reason why it's so hard for people is because there's so much bad information from non-millionaires, right? They're sharing their theories. So for example, we've heard these are the daily habits of millionaires and successful people, that you got to wake up early, you got to exercise, you should learn every day, you got to eat right, you got to, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? I know some multi-millionaires actually who sleep till noon. So that's bull crap. This idea of you have to get up early, not even true. This idea of that you need to work hard, bull crap. You don't take massive action, you take deliberate action. I know some millionaires personally that are some of the laziest people that you'll ever meet, but they understand the systems that create money, and they know how to do that part right. And so massive action is a big, big lie. I don't want you to get busy. Millionaires don't look at ways to create more effort and work. They look actually for ways to become productive. And so the work that they do is very deliberate. And so, like I said, I think the reason why it's so easy for us to be knocked off course is because we're being fed so much garbage. It's not true. It's not how money's made.
Yeah, work harder and harder. And I know that people have said it's like and I fell into that, was the 10,000 hours that it takes to become an expert at something, but they forgot to actually say that the 10,000 hours of rest and the 10,000 hours of sleep that go along with the 10,000 hours.
You know what? Even that 10,000 hours, let's look at that. First of all, it doesn't have to be your 10,000 hours. Most of my money is made by people who work for me, right? Or systems that I've created, or technology that someone else has built that I've learned how to use. Right? So that 10,000 hour thing to become an expert, that's true, but you don't have to become an expert to become a millionaire. That's something totally different. Those are two different things. If I want to become a heart surgeon, it's going to take me 10,000 hours because I got to learn it. But if I want to become a millionaire, like I said, I get somebody else to help me. One of the biggest principles that most people are missing when it comes to creating wealth is just this idea of leverage, right? We talk about OPM, other people's money, right? But the reality is that's one of the weakest things to leverage. I mean, if you can figure out how to use other elements of leverage, the money comes easily anyways, right? So there's so many missing parts on this. I'm excited to share it. It's just,
that's what I love about Henry Ford, wasn't it? Henry Ford, whenever he was they took the papers to court, didn't they? And then he was just going, well, why do I need to have this information when I've got 10 buttons here? I just press this one and he goes and does it for me. I think that's brilliant.
Well, it's totally true here too. I think the thing that is interesting, sometimes people ask me, Doug, what do you do for a living? Like if you ask me, what do you do for a living?
What do you do for a living, Doug?
As little as possible, and I delegate the rest. Because that's really what wealth is about, because wealth isn't just the money. I mean, that's important, But wealth is also having all the other things too, like freedom of time, freedom of location, freedom of opportunity. And so the question is how do you build these systems of leverage so that other people and systems or automation and technology are actually building your money? Do you know who your number one employee actually is? Your number one employee?
No.
It's money. Money is your number one employee, because he or she, whatever you want to call them, and I guess it depends what country, who's on the bill, right? The reality is money never calls in sick. It never argues with you. It always does exactly what you tell it to do. And so maybe even let me share this as a story. When I was doing my original interviews with the world's top achievers, I became really close personal friends with a fellow by the name of Frank McGuire. He became just like my grandpa. Frank was one of the co-founders of Federal Express, the former VP of marketing for all of KFC and American Airlines. He worked under the White House for Lyndon B. Johnson and JFK. He helped get JFK elected. And there's so many other things about this guy. But let me share with you this story. So we were leaving a hotel one time, Frank and I. And there was this kid who was there loading our luggage into the vehicle that was going to take us to the airport. Well, after this little bellboy did his thing, he came around and he held out his hand for the tip. And well, Frank pulled out a $5 bill and he passed it to the kid, but he didn't let go. Right? So he just held it. So you got these two people holding this $5 bill, fighting over it, right? And Frank simply looks in this kid's eyes and he says, "What did I just give you?" And this kid kind of looked at Frank like, who says this as they give you a $5 bill? He says, $5. And Frank said, "What's it worth?" The kid looks down at the $5 and all kind of, I don't know, $5. And Frank then said, "It all depends on what you do with it next." The reality is every dollar that you ever have is a seed, right? I want you to think about it that way. And the question is where are you going to plant your seeds? Are you the guy that goes to the mall and says, "I need the pair of shoes. I'm taking all my friends out for dinner. I'm doing this, blah, 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 blah." That's not really the way that wealthy people look at it. In fact, it's interesting because I put up a post not too long ago because a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, millionaires, they don't buy toys. The real millionaires, they don't buy toys. They don't have fancy cars. They don't have all this nice stuff, blah, 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 blah." And there's a lot of well-known financial gurus out there, you know, like Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman and all these people who also say you got to shrink the budget, blah, 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 blah. And I don't agree with that. In fact, again, after interviewing 700 millionaires, I know a lot of millionaires that have toys, but how did they get them? The reality is what they do, they don't buy toys, they buy assets that generate the cash to pay for the toys. So it's a sequential thing. It's not that they don't buy toys, it's the order in which they buy it. They buy things that generate capital. You've heard it said before, those who play first have to pay later. And those who pay first get to play later with interest. And so here's the idea, and I like that idea with interest too, okay? Because if you set things up correctly in the beginning and you acquire these assets that are cash flowing and that generate the capital in advance, well, then you can go buy the toys. That's how I bought a Ferrari with no cash down. Not too long ago, I just bought a Ducati motorcycle, no cash down. My assets buy those things for me. And well, this is a whole other discussion, but you know, when your assets buy them for you, and maybe even your company does too, because you're the owner of the company, so you might as well have a company vehicle. Let's make it a Ferrari.
Of course you need a company car. Of course you do.
Right. But all of a sudden now when you buy the vehicle of your dreams as a company vehicle, there's also the tax implications that are different, right? Yeah. So the reality is both wealthy and broke people buy toys. Both of them do. It's just that some do it before they actually establish the cash flow mechanisms behind it, and some also do it to them directly personally, and they end up suffering because of it. And because they don't have very much cash, they don't even buy very good toys anyways, right? These are all toys, right?
Such important messages.
If you do it in the right sequence, then you're onto something, right?
Is that is that where the lost message came from? So whenever you interviewed those 700 millionaires, you were just going, people are missing the point here. They're really missing the point. Is that where the next?
I think so, but the lost message doesn't deal exclusively with money. And here's maybe something to think about too. You've heard it said that money never was happiness, right? Mm. And I love kind of what Bo Derek said. She said, those who say money never was happiness just don't know where to shop. And I think that that's kind of partially true. And what do I mean by that? And maybe this is where the lost message comes in. And we're not going to reveal everything about that movie coming out. But a lot of times people miss the true value of wealth because they're trying to accumulate something that's not authentic to what they really want anyways. Right? John DeMartini once said it to me this way. He said that everyone's wealthy. It just appears in the value or in the form that they value the most. Again, everyone's wealthy. It just appears in the form that they value the most.
Very profound. I love that.
Yeah, and I think that that's true. I think really everybody is wealthy, but the reality is many people are seeking wealth in a form that's not authentic to what they really value, right? And if you were to ask me, and also I suppose we could say many of the millionaires that I interviewed, in fact, I do have stats directly on this, out of the 700 that I interviewed, 88% of them thereabouts made their million in a business, right? They were self-made in a business that they started. Now, it's funny when you ask them, okay, so what was your goal in starting the business? There's very few of them that will say the primary goal was money. I mean, it is a goal. Like, we got to be profitable. What do we say? If you have a business and you don't make a profit, you don't get the privilege to continue, right? It's that easy. So making money is important. But if you ask them what the goal was, most of them won't say that's the primary goal. Most of them will mention such things as, well, they wanted, again, to have either freedom, freedom to work for themselves, to do their own hours, to select their own time. They wanted to have, the opportunity of freedom of location, maybe freedom of expression and creation. They wanted to have recognition for what they did. They wanted to make a difference, create a legacy. They knew a problem needed to be solved. Like, these are all the things where they go. And the reality is if you start a business just for money, you're always going to struggle. I mean, we take the money, you need the money, but it's not for the money. But if we create a business that's authentic to who we really are and what we want to do, well, then it becomes easier to actually make money, right? Because you're actually adding so much value because you're really committed to this. You're dedicated to it, and it's important to you. And so I think that that's really kind of where those kind of things connect. And again, without saying too much about the movie, when it comes out, we're going to get into a lot of why even becoming an authentic millionaire. And I don't mean by, authentic, we verified him on paper, it's $1 million. Like, that's true. You can do that, right? Happy to have people do that. But authentic, I mean that in the sense of the internal component of you, what got you to that million level, that millionaire status, right? And it's a lot easier to get to millionaire status when you're coming from an authentic point than it is to try and do something faking it, right?
Well, that's it, isn't it? You see that, about money and happiness is that some people can get the money, but then they're not happy and they still have all these other problems where, if you could actually be authentic in getting the millions, then that's whenever your true life status comes alive then. And I can see that in you, Douglas. I was saying that just before we got on, for everybody who's watching, that Douglas has just got so much on the go, but he's just like, well, no, this is just fun. This was a relaxing day. I did this, and this. And I'm like, okay, that's Douglas relaxing.
And it's interesting too, because we mentioned at the beginning that, we use systems and we use, the resources of other people to do that. So I think that's also important, that anyone who's on your team needs to feel the same way about it. They're there because they're passionate. They're not there just because they're getting paid. And there's a big, big difference between that. I might mention it's interesting because, we talk about these 700 millionaires that I've interviewed, but there's also the 400 top achievers that I originally interviewed. And what most people don't really understand is I talk about the number 400, but I actually interviewed a heck of a lot more than that. People that were very wealthy, very famous, but I didn't really think all of them were successful. Because there were things that they were doing that were not really truly them. And there were some of them that even mentioned, some of the things that they chose to sacrifice. Now, sacrifice is important, right? Because the reality is you can't have your cake and eat it too unless you've taken the time to bake the damn cake, right? So we got to start by making the cake in order to have our cake and eat it too. And sometimes that means long hours, long efforts, investing money, investing time, and all these things, right? In fact, one of the ways that you pay yourself first is sometimes by hiring people smarter than you that will actually get paid more than you're able to take home. You put the best people in place first, right? Steve Jobs said it best. He says, we don't hire smart people so we can tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. Let them make the money. And so as I looked at some of these people, they weren't always successful because sometimes for them, how do we say? Stephen Covey said it this way. He said, some people climb the ladder of success only to find it's leaning against the wrong wall. So some of the people that I'd interviewed, they were very successful, but they didn't really take enough time at the beginning to think through what they wanted the success to really look like or feel like once they got through. Right?
So what's your advice to people? Because when I've, looked at different people and they've, they're either not very nice, but I mean, they are truly nice inside. They just don't appear nice on the outside. I mean, they have, anyway, so without judgment, but they've got money. But then there's other people who are, they study and study and study and they don't have money. So it's nothing to do with personal development either. Why do some people have money and work really hard and other people don't? What is that? But you're saying that some of the millionaires that you've met, I mean, they're not happy. So it's nothing to do with who you are being, is it? It's to do with something else.
What's interesting is you said that one of the first things to come through my mind was, I've also met a lot of broke people that work really, really hard and try to learn a lot, right? So those factors, I think, can have some big things to do with money, but there's a lot of predictable markers in millionaires that make the difference between the two in terms of money. The other thing I might mention is we're talking a lot about this term millionaire, but you don't need $1 million to also be wealthy, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess as a point, what's your definition of wealthy? And then can I tell you that whatever number you're going to give me, the minute you've hit that, that's no longer your definition because you want more, right? So if you say, oh, if I could have, and I'm just throwing this out, let's say that you live in a third world country where, $1,800 is the annual income of most of you and your friends, right? Well, if you could all of a sudden say, if I could just get to 10 times that amount, I'd be wealthy. Now you got $10,000. Well, now what's happened? Have you move over to the United States somewhere? $10,000 as an annual income is poverty, right? So what is wealth, right? You get to decide that. And I believe it's independent technically of the numbers. Millionaire status is actually an actual measurable thing. You can say you have $1 million in the applicable currency of the area where you live, right? We can measure that. But wealth is different. Wealth you can't measure. You get to decide what that looks like.
And I love what you said with John Asraf's comment there. That was just that it really is. I mean, it really is up to you, isn't it? You've got to notice. And that's the awareness of just stopping sometimes and just noticing what's around you. I mean, Douglas, whenever I moved into this house that I'm in now, it took me 3 months to realize that I'd made a quantum leap in myself because I was still going forward because it wasn't good enough. And I just stopped in the kitchen one time and I looked around and I went, oh, this was my vision. Oh my God, I'm in it. And I've been in it for 3 months before I even noticed.
Well, it's really kind of funny. And I was just talking to somebody the other day about this. So I'm here in my office right now. Okay. And it's kind of funny that sometimes we get so caught up. I'm going to actually try and see if this computer will allow me to do this. I'm going to actually lift up my computer and I'm just going to show you what I can see outside my windows right now. Okay. And if you were to look, I'm actually up here in a big high rise. There's whoops, baby, I got to get out of the way. There's a big park that's down below there. There's another building next to ours, but then there's the whole skyline of my city and everything, right? Like, so this is yeah, I guess, hey, right? And you can see if you're in my city, that's Calgary Tower, right? So I'm up here in the penthouse of this building here. And the thing that's interesting that a lot of people, how do we say, that we use this as a lesson, we pointed it out. A lot of people would think that this is just a beautiful location, right? Like it's an incredible location. But sometimes people get so minutely caught up on things, and so do I. Here I am on my computer, and let's say I'm typing and I'm thinking about that I often forget that I'm actually in a beautiful location like this, right? We're so focused on the details of things that we often forget to see the big grand picture of it, right? And so I think that a lot of people, when it comes to wealth, are that way. They're too busy missing the mark. They're looking for something beyond, or they're too heads down into the details that they actually don't see that there's wealth and prosperity around them. Another thing that's interesting about this is, if we observe it, is, I do a lot of live seminars on money, specifically the concept of million, right? And so there's a program that we were running a few years ago called Your First Million's on the Way. What's easier to get, your first or your second? Well, once you have your first, your second's pretty easy because you know what to do. And I had this guy come up to me at the beginning of this event and he says, I want to become a millionaire. That's why I'm here today. And a lot of people over the years have come up and said that to me because they think I'm going to be like, congratulations, I can tell you're going to do it. And I'll pat him on the head and all this kind of stuff. But no, my first kind of response to that always is, why? You want to be a millionaire and you're here today? Well, why? I really want to know. And it was interesting. This one gentleman that I was talking to like this, he said, it's because I want to live on the beach one day. Well, you know what's interesting is I used to live in California. I'd go to Venice Beach from time to time, and there's even homeless people living on the beach. You don't need $1 million to live on the beach, right? You don't.
Be careful what you ask for.
Exactly. And so I said that to this guy, and I said, you know, I've also got a friend actually who's in Mexico who's got a dive shop on Akumal Beach, and he makes about $200,000 a year. So you don't have to be a millionaire. And then I also pointed out, I know a guy, first, like one-on-one, I know him really well. He just bought an island, and it cost him $500,000 to buy the entire island. Now, I'm not saying that he doesn't pay now to have things shipped there, because islands generally don't have stores and things that you need. So it's expensive, but to own the island was only $500,000. So here's the deal. Oftentimes we get this imaginary idea that we need to have so much wealth before we can feel wealthy. And the reality is it's generally more accessible than what we think. And we can generally create it a lot easier. And I think we just need to be careful of that. Now, again, there's a definition between an actual millionaire status and then someone who's wealthy. So make sure if you get to millionaire status that you actually have both.
And you feel wealthy as well, isn't it? One of the statements that I said today, and it was actually through the minds of some CEOs. And what it said was, I said, you do not get what you want. You get what you've already got, you know, so you've already got to have it before you can have it. And they didn't understand that. I don't know if you want to explain it, if you've got a way around that.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple things that you need to understand that. First of all, if you want to expand what you have to expand who you are. And so I think that's maybe a beginning part of that to think about. And if you don't have something in your life already that you really want, I think it's a really important thing to go back and examine who you are. Right? Because if you really wanted it, you would find ways to start seeing those things in your life. You'd establish boundaries around the things that take you away from it, and you'd make it a priority if it's something that's truly authentic to you. Again, back to that idea, our wealth appears in the form that we value most. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people, first of all, don't have clarity on what they really, really want. And one of the reasons they don't get clarity, I believe, is because they're afraid, because they don't yet know how. So therefore, don't look at the what. If we don't have some how, we got to stay away from the what, right? And this idea of the what is, you know, I mean, it's funny because there's a lot of teachers that are out there saying, set it and forget it, right? Put the intention out there. Don't worry about the what. That's none of your business. I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, but I believe that the what never shows itself in any way until you figure out the how, or the how until you figure out the why, really, right? The why is the first. So if we really want to have this, why do we really want it? Why did this guy want $1 million? Because he wants to live on the beach. Well, now that's identified the what, but now we can start looking at the how. Well, maybe it doesn't take that, right? The other thing that's kind of interesting is I've never met anybody who, you know, that I've asked the same question. I want to be a millionaire. And I said, why? I've never met anybody who said, because I want to have a suitcase full of paper with dead people on it. Like, that's money in a suitcase, right? I've never met anybody that's had that answer. And so their answers are always something experiential. And now when I start digging into that, you know, whether it's that they want to travel the world, or they want to give back, or start a foundation, or open a school or an orphanage or something, whenever I ask them about that, I say, well, how did you arrive at that number of $1 million to do that? Like, how did you build that budget, so to speak? They then kind of look with a blank face and assume, well, it must take $1 million. I must need $1 million to do that. But, you know, it doesn't, right? If you start kind of itemizing it and breaking it down, what do we say? That a goal that is specific and clear becomes attainable and near. So the question that I always have when we get into these what and how and even the why conversations, the why is pretty easy. You can come up with that on your own. I get it. But now the what and the how, most people are lazy. They don't think it through to be able to say, actually, my what is I do want a school. I want to have a school or an orphanage. And now the how, well, I've got to look at how much that'll cost. And now I'm going to, you know, I can then kind of looking at opportunities, right? By increasing the probability that it'll occur by either, you know, maybe going to meet people, talk to people. Like, here's the deal. If you had a conversation, let's say, for example, one of your listeners right now, you want to start an orphanage. Well, I've got the money. I could do that with you. But when you come to talk to me, I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm not just going to say, oh, orphanage, hooray, let's pull up my checkbook and I'll write you a check and I don't fill it in It's blank. Fill it in. No, I want to know some details. And if you don't know the details, it may not be me that helps you, but the universe couldn't help you either, right? Until you kind of know what that really looks like, right? How can any of it appear? It's kind of like, again, what do we say? It's, imagine, if you will, because they're printing money every day at the Mint. There's a lot of money out there right now. Every day there's money being printed. So imagine it this way. If there was a suitcase full of money with your name on it, do you know enough to go find out where it's at? Like, I mean, the address, if it's parked right now in someone's backyard just waiting for you on the porch there, you just got to go pick it up. Do you have the details to know what the address looks like? Most people don't ever take the time. They just say, oh, $1 million, it'll come, it'll come. Well, the truth about things like the law of attraction is, yes, from time to time, things are brought into your life. They will come in. And you'll just put it out to the energy to the universe, and you'll say, make me this, bring me that, and yes, it will appear. But the majority of the time, that's not how it works. The majority of the time is you put the energy out, and then the universe basically makes you aware of these opportunities, right? Kind of like our first law, right? If others have done it, you can do it too. And if you see other things, or you're so in tune with this idea of, maybe, again, let's say you want to be a millionaire, that all of a sudden what the universe gives you is opportunities to take action on different, it's almost like you're walking down the street and there's a variety of doors that are there, right? In life, you can go through any door that you want, right? What's behind door number 1? What's behind door number 2? Well, if you set the energy, all of a sudden there's going to be a sign on the door that says this could be the $1 million door. And then you're going to see another door that says this one's just a pleasant distraction. If you don't get focused, you're going to just open any door that shows up, right? But generally, your $1 million door isn't the first one you're always going to see.
Yeah, get definite with the infinite.
You got to get definite with the infinite.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what Bob Proctor is like, fantasy theory fact. And whenever I first started with Bob Proctor, I'd seen my ideal house and it was 1.8 million. A month later, I decided to go and work with Bob Proctor. And in our call, he actually said, well, if you do this, 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 and this, you can earn 1.8 million. And I went, oh my God, he just made my fantasy into a theory, but it's up to me to make it into a fact. I've got to do something. I don't just sit there and go, yes, it's going to come. But what I love what you said there, Douglas, and it's going to stick with me, is just that if you want to expand your life, you have to expand yourself. Love
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah. And it's also kind of interesting just with that, again, remember we talked again kind of at the beginning about this idea that we feel like so much is really on us. If we don't have the answers, then we can't do it. It's that idea. People say, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Well, that's bullcrap. That's totally not true. If it's meant to be, it starts with you. And there's a lot of people that think really, really big. And then what happens to deflate that thinking? Well, they think big, they get inspired, but all of a sudden they're like, oh, wow, I don't know how to do that. So then they shut it down. So it's not really up to you. All wealth and success is always created by a team. No exceptions. Wealth and success is always created by a team. And if you look at anybody in the world that's ever created either success in anything, whether it's the arts, whether it's athleticism, whether it's business, whether it's, you fill in the blank, and also wealth, they've always surrounded themselves by really good people. And so here's the deal. You think big, but what fills the gap between you and there? Well, it's going out and getting help, right? And that's what allows us to continue to think big when we think that actually, if it's meant to be, it is not up to me. It starts with me. Let's go assemble the team. And then you're going to find people who know more than you, who have the skill sets than you, and there they go. The reality is that, and I know this is, I don't know, I'm not trying to sound self-depreciating, but the reality is I'm not really that smart. I just know how to surround myself with smart people. That is the key. Right? And the big reason I think so many people can't surround themselves with smart people, and what keeps you from being wealthy, is you're damn greedy. You're greedy. You think you need to not only keep all the money, I can't afford to hire anybody to help me. Well, that's a greedy way to look at it. But it's not just greedy with the money, it's that you also don't want anybody else to get the credit, right? Or you don't trust anybody else. I can do it better than anyone else anyways. If I get somebody else, they're going to mess up the whole system.
I love this, Douglas.
Right? Or you say, this is my baby. I created this business, so it's got to be me that does it. Well, those are some of the most selfish things a person could ever say. And selfish people never become wealthy. Selfish people always get to just keep exactly what they've got because they're not prepared to engage or involve other people. And what's interesting is I studied these 700 millionaires. One of the things that I found that was really startling is how quickly they got other people involved.
Mm.
Right? Like almost immediately, right? They didn't hesitate. They didn't wait. It's like, again, if this thing is going to be made or if it's worth putting effort into or whatever, I need to get others on it right away.
Mm.
Right?
I'm learning that about the Russian doll effect. I can't remember who said it. It's like, but if you look for people that you have to train, then you end up with a Russian doll that goes down rather than what you want is a Russian doll that goes up.
Yeah. And you know, what's interesting, there is a place to train people. For sure there is in a business. But the reality is you'll always want the best advice from others. Like here's maybe just something from my own life experience. It's interesting. As we started this conversation off, I mentioned that, you know, I interviewed at the beginning when I was 19, 400 of these world's top achievers. I started interviewing them. And I was able to generate my first million literally inside of 6 months when I was a 19-year-old. I did approximately $1.6 million a day, which is about $9,000 a day. Again, if I look back though, it's not because I was smart. It's because I had people around me who told me exactly what to do, right? They showed me, do this, do that, go here. Here's an opportunity, try this. And I think, again, there's that, you know, you got to have that leap of faith to get rid of that selfishness. You know, and I'm saying do your due diligence. Don't just trust anybody who says you should do this.
I've learned. I'm still learning.
But we've got to learn and follow people who literally have done what they've said. They practice what they preach. And by the way, I also generally won't invest in anyone's company unless they've got some money in it themselves. So they've got to believe in it enough. It's not enough to just say, oh, please help me. What do we say? One of the biggest strategies or things to observe with leverage, like OPM, also other people's knowledge, other people's time, other people's expertise. The reality is people won't give you any of theirs until they see you're using yours properly, right? So, you know, anybody that I invest with, I'm watching keenly to see, like, if they're asking me for money, how much money have they got in the game? How well have they done managing their own money? Right? Actually, I don't know how much time you've got, but here's a funny story that taught me this in a funny way. Is when I was first starting on this journey as a young man, I had the idea I wanted to start a business. And at the time, like I said, I was interviewing multi-millionaires and multi-billionaires. So what do they say? Take a millionaire to lunch. So I decided I'm going to take one of my multi-millionaire friends to lunch. I'm going to see if he'll invest in my company. That'll be the quickest way to go and get some money, right? And so I invited him to go for lunch. And I met him in his office. And I'll never forget, instead of taking his car, which I thought we were going to, he said, let's take your car. And here I am, I'm this teenager, right? So I had this little, no kidding, look it up, it's the funniest car ever, this Turismo TC3 Plymouth hatchback, okay? Yeah, just a crummy little car. And here I've got this multimillionaire that wants to drive in my car. Anyways, here's the problem, is I knew what my car looked like. And so when he said, let's go to your car, oh my gosh, I had to get to the car first because there was Slurpee cups and CDs and cassette tapes and gym bags and all kinds of things that were all over the place. And so I kind of quickly got in the car before him and I cleaned off the seat and I put everything in the back and kind of organized it as best as I could, but it was embarrassing. So anyways, he sat in there and I'll never forget, he just kind of sat like this beside me. We got to the restaurant, we got out, I pulled out this little business plan that I prepared, and I started to try and do my pitch. And he just stopped me. He says, you know what? I've already made my decision. And I was like, really? Oh, I'm all optimistic. And he's like, yeah, I can't invest in your company. I'm like, what? He goes, I saw your car. And then he pointed out, how you do one thing is how you do everything. He says, if I were to give you money right now, he says, it would all be gone. This company would be a disaster. It would never work. You're just not organized in your life enough to get this sorted out. Right? And that was a big lesson for me. And the reality is it comes back to that idea that OPM or leverage or any of these other things, those who have it are always watching to see where they should put it based on how you're taking care of your own life, right? And this is also why things like fake it till you make it never work. Because fake it till you make it is a lie. You'll fool the people below you. But remember what I said? Wealth and success is a team. You need people above you. You need people to help you. And you won't fool people above you with fake it till you make it. You'll fool the ones below you, but those above you, they can recognize that. They know what faking it looks like. And the reality is they will never attach their reputation to that. Their reputation is too important to them. It's kind of like one of my friends put it this way. He says it's like, imagine having you're having a pool party, a barbecue pool party at your house. You know, as a rich guy, hanging out with the guy who's a fake it till you make it is like inviting the kid that peed in the pool. Nobody wants to hang out with you. Nobody's happy about that, right? And so any of your other rich friends will kind of say, yeah, every time he's around, he invites the kid that pees in the pool. So we're not going to his pool party anymore. So their reputation is too important to play around with fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it's a total lie, which is also very different than act as if. That's different. And who knows, we could also spend an hour talking about that, but you know, rich people don't want.
We came on here for 20 minutes, and then we could keep you here all night, Douglas.
Well,
I agree with you. I think
we'll come back again.
Yeah, I think people below you as well. I think that they will feel it if you're faking it till you make it anyway. But their logic will kick in, and they'll think, oh, well, they must know something more than me.
Well, the other thing too is it comes back to that saying too that nice guys finish last. The reality is nice guys get to come back and play again. If you're a faker or you're somebody that doesn't have the real goods and you're purporting yourself to be so, you might come once, but you never get invited back, right? Because even the people below you soon find it out. It's interesting in this world of like personal development and course creation and all of these things. There's a lot of people who are putting out that fake it till you make it vibe. They're claiming that they've done this and that and they've made all kinds of money and all this kind of crap. And they may fool those below them with an excited dream for a minute. But the minute these people come through that program and realize that you just sold me a bunch of crap, there's nothing there. There's no substance. My wealth hasn't changed. My situation hasn't changed. You're a good salesperson. You're a good talker. But, you know, even this, you know, Lamborghini that you're driving and all this stuff, it's rented. Or this clothing that you've got, it's not yours. Right? And that gets found out and those people get shut down really, really quick. So
I think that's is it the hidden millionaire? Because the ones who are really rich aren't the ones that aren't the flashy ones. You know, that's just something I don't know.
Well, I do know some flashy millionaires, and here's the deal: is it's all a matter of context. Because I would lie to you. There's times me and some of my millionaire friends get together and we do show off for each other.
Why not?
We come with our exotic cars and we go and have parties and we do all these things and we do show off for each other. But there's a context for that, right? There's times that we do it. The reality is if you look at most of us on a regular basis, you're right, we would blend in. There's something also that's interesting. And I don't know if this is 100% true, but I'm feeling like it is that he who tells you how much money they have generally has nothing. Real wealthy people don't tell you about how much they've actually got, right? And you know, it's interesting that I have a couple of friends, and no kidding, I mean, this has happened to me too, that all of a sudden they'll come up with something like either a vehicle or one of my friends, we showed up at the airport and he says, you know what, I'm tired of waiting in line here. I actually do have a private plane. We can just take that instead. I generally fly commercial first class, but I do have a private plane and this is taking too long. Why don't we go? So I've got friends that they won't tell you what they have and you'll be like, what? And that's just the way sometimes wealthy people roll, right?
Super.
Right?
Listen, Douglas, you have just given so much information here. I'm going to be dealing with lots of stuff for tomorrow. That's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to replay this again and I'm going to pick out points that you've said and we'll have that for discussion tomorrow. Do you have any final words for anybody? I mean, it's just, this whole week has been about, you know, prosperity consciousness and literally about like just what you said actually about that lost message and about what is real wealth and do you really need $1 million to be wealthy?
Well, you know, honestly, if we're just talking about prosperity consciousness, most people do not understand prosperity consciousness. They think it's all about beliefs. But how do we know that something's truly in our consciousness? It translates into activity. And so prosperity consciousness is actually really 3 steps. It's first awareness, like we talked about. Second, we measure that awareness always against our internal beliefs, and that's where the conflicts start to happen for many people. But lastly, if you really are a person full of prosperity consciousness, you take action on those things. And I think that this is something that you really need to understand is, you know, it's one thing to say, you know, I've got this energy that I'm going to be somebody special and amazing and exciting and prosperous and all this kind of crap. The reality is money has no opinion. You know, you can say that to yourself all day long. Money doesn't come and say, oh, yes, you're right. Let me arrive in your front door. The truth is if you could watch a lot of Hollywood movies, there is truth to the fact that drug dealers, pimps, prostitutes, murderers, and those guys, gun runners, all those guys, they have money too. So money isn't on the side going, well, I like him, I don't like him. I like him, but I don't like him. That really, this exercise you're doing with prosperity consciousness, that's for you. because net worth is always preceded by self-worth. And if you don't feel like you're worth it, then you're going to always sabotage yourself. So if you get this part right, saying I'm worth it, the next step is actually to understand how money really does arrive. And again, that's through systems. And systems, don't care who sets it up. It doesn't matter if you're a good person, a bad person, or in between. If you set up a system, money comes. It's like, again, if I were to go into my backyard today and I planted a seed for an apple tree, the apple tree in the backyard doesn't go, well, I don't know if I really like this guy. Maybe I shouldn't grow here. The seed doesn't care, right? But you got to have the understanding of and the belief to plant the seed.
Right? I love it. Love it. Love it. And what a beautiful way to end. That's just absolutely an amazing way to end. Listen, Douglas, I'm looking forward to all the work that you're pulling out. It's like everybody, I've linked Douglas's name in on the comments up here and in Facebook and in LinkedIn. So everybody can find out a bit more about Douglas and find out what he's up to just by clicking on his link there. Well, unless you've got something that you want to share.
Let's give a few things away. So we've got a group called Predictable Millionaire on Facebook. It's free to join. And every day I'm putting stuff in there that will help you. And we've also got our website, predictablemillionairenow.com. And I've got some free gifts in there. In fact, one of the things that's really cool is we identified what we call the 25 indicators that will show whether you are primed to become a millionaire or not. And you'll see these 25 things consistently in all of those 700 millionaires. You can do them too. If you don't have them, that's fine. If you take this little assessment on yourself and say, well, I've got like 14 out of the 25, that's okay. Now you know what the missing ones are. So you can go ahead and you can fill in the blanks. And even if you don't, like I said, get to the millionaire status, you know, what would happen if you made an extra $100,000 this year, right? Would that help you? Would you be okay with that, right? So it's worth looking at. I know that for many of our students and even myself, I mean, learning these principles has made a big difference, right?
Brilliant.
And I know it can help.
I so appreciate your time, and we've tripled the length of time I said we'd spend with you,
yeah,
but
fun.
I absolutely enjoy it, and thank you so much, Douglas. I'm going to end the broadcast here, and it'll be saying goodbye to everybody else who's watched. Thank you so much.